Second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone abstain? All right, moving on to 4.0 action items. We'll start, I think, with one of our favorite. Hi, how are you? One of our, I think personally, one of our nicest things to do, and that is to recommend approval of resolutions granting emeritus status. And we have 3 tonight who are with us. So we will start. Jim, can you sign with me? Nope, but Diana will. All right, we'll start tonight with Dr. Lorenz Fershing. Whereas Dr. Lorenz Fershing began his service to SUNY Broome as an adjunct instructor in the Liberal Arts Division in 1981, an assistant professor in 1988, and an associate professor in 1991, and a full professor in 2005. Whereas Dr. Lorenz Fershing served as a coordinator of history, philosophy, and social sciences for 7 years, and chair of history, philosophy, and social sciences for almost 5 years, tirelessly supporting the department faculty in both roles. Whereas Professor Lorenz Fershing dedicated his career to his students and colleagues each day, going above and beyond his responsibilities to ensure the department and student success. Whereas Dr. Lorenz Fershing's commitment to teaching and learning was recognized when awarded the SUNY Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2005. Whereas since 1988, Professor Lorenz Fershing developed numerous courses for the history, philosophy, and social sciences department, including Japanese history, Chinese history, history of Vietnam, and American food and society, political science internship. Whereas Dr. Lorenz Fershing rewrote all the department's course descriptions and student learning outcomes and facilitated and reported assessment of all the department's course offerings. Whereas Professor Lorenz Fershing served as a full-time educator for 33 years. He served as a faculty advisor, mentor, and role model for students interested in history. Whereas Professor Lorenz Fershing mentored junior faculty members, coordinating their tenure and promotion processes, and retired in good standing on July 1st, 2022. Be it therefore resolved that the Division of Liberal Arts expresses its deepest gratitude for Professor Fershing's long and committed service to the History, Philosophy, and Social Sciences Department, and to SUNY Broome and to his profession in the areas of teaching, leadership, academic scholarship, and service to the campus community. And be it further resolved that Dr. Lorenz Fershing be granted the status of Professor Emeritus of SUNY Broome with all its privileges. I hereby certify that the foregoing is true and correct. Kathy Connerton is Chair of the Board of Trustees. Something. Congratulations. Oh, we're gonna take a picture right there.
We can take a picture of something.
Hold this. Yeah. Want me to open it so you can?
Please, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank
how
you.
about that? I'll hold this one and you hold that one. All right.
2 for the price of 1.
There. Like that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you. This is one thing that's much better in person than on Zoom. Okay. The second one is for Dr. Harold Koster. Whereas Dr. Harold Koster began his service to SUNY Broome as an adjunct instructor in the Liberal Arts Division in 1990, an assistant professor in 2000, an associate professor in 2004, and full professor in 2010. Whereas Professor Harold Koster developed and successfully taught natural science lab courses in archaeology, biological and cultural anthropology, and also teaching history, sociology, and co-developing the history of Vietnam in America. Whereas Dr. Harold Koster conducted field research in Greece and Italy and published in the fields of anthropology, archaeology, and history. Whereas Dr. Harold Koster actively contributed to the design of the Natural Sciences Building, participated in many campus committees, and consistently took in additional tasks for the well-being of the department, division, and campus. Whereas Professor Harold Koster cared deeply about his students' academic success and personal well-being, serving also as a faculty advisor and mentor. Whereas Dr. Harold Koster shared his time, talent, and expertise in participating in community environmental efforts to stop a county incinerator and fracking. Whereas Professor Harold Koster served the college as a full-time educator for 22 years. He played a key role in curriculum development for History, Philosophy, and Social Sciences Department, and is one of the department's forefathers of online teaching, having taught in all online platforms, Lotus Notes, WebCT, Angel, and Blackboard. Whereas Professor Harold Koster mentored other junior faculty members both in the department and larger division, and retired in good standing on June 30th, 2022. Be it there resolved that the Division of Liberal Arts expresses its deepest gratitude for Professor Harold Koster's long and committed service to the History, Philosophy, and Social Sciences Department, and to SUNY Broome, and to his profession in the areas of teaching, leadership, academic scholarship, and service to the campus community. And be it further resolved that Dr. Harold Koster be granted the status of Professor Emeritus of SUNY Broome with all its privileges. I hereby certify that the foregoing is true and correct. Kathy Connerton is chairperson for the Board of Trustees.
Yes, you get to hold that one. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
And the third one, Dr. Laura Manzo is not with us tonight, but we will still honor her, certainly. Whereas Dr. Laura Manzo began her service at SUNY Broome as an adjunct instructor in the Liberal Arts Division in 1991, an assistant professor in 2000, an associate professor in 2004, and professor in 2009. Whereas Dr. Laura Manzo, chair of the Foreign Languages and English as a Second Language Department from 1997 to 2013. Whereas Dr. Laura Manzo published articles in academic journals in both English and Spanish and presented papers at the academic conferences. Whereas Dr. Laura Manzo served as a member of the editorial board for the Academic Journal of the University of Antigua, Medellin, Colombia, and served as a member of the editorial board of the collection, oh boy, it's in Spanish, Education and Society Journal of the Universidad Autónoma de, oh boy,
Zacatecas.
yes, thank you, Mexico. Whereas Dr. Laura Manzo developed a women's gender and sexualities anthropology course for the History, Philosophy, and Social Sciences Department, and developed learning outcomes ad, conducted assessments for humanities, history, and Spanish. Whereas Professor Laura Manzo mentored her students to guide them in pursuing their academic goals and mentored high school faculty teaching fast-forward foreign language courses. Whereas Dr. Laura Manzo pursued postdoctoral coursework in the Complutense University in Madrid, Spain. Be it therefore resolved that the Division of Liberal Arts expresses its deepest gratitude for Dr. Laura Manzo's dedication and devotion and long and committed service to SUNY Broome and to her profession in the areas of teaching leadership, academic scholarship, and service to the campus community. And be it further resolved that Dr. Laura Manzo be granted the status of Professor Emeritus of SUNY Broome with all its privileges. I hereby certify that the foregoing is true and correct. Kathy Connerton is chair of the SUNY Broome Board of Trustees. All right, thank you all for coming. That's very nice.
Let's get it on.
All right, we'll go on then to 4.2.
I would.
Recommend approval of the resolution to rename the SUNY Broome Community College baseball field to the Edwin C. Dog Field. Motion? Thanks, Barbara. Second. Mark, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, that's wonderful. 4.3, recommend approval of the new policy AA 4009, library collection development policy. Motion? Jim, thank you. Second. Thank you. Tina, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? 4.4, recommend approval of bid 2023-07 mobile enrollment van. Motion?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Jason. Second. Tina, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, we'll move on to the Bonadeo audit
We do
presentation.
need a motion on 4.1.
Oh, I'm
for the
sorry. Yeah,
narrative.
you're right. I apologize. 4.1, motion. Thank you, Anthony. Second. Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right. All right, we'll move on to the Bonadeo audit presentation. Good evening.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. I'm Joe Hero. I'm a principal with the Bonadeo Group. Alan Walther was the partner on the engagement. He unfortunately has another board meeting tonight. I've been overseeing the audit for, I don't know, maybe 5 years now, 6 years. So I have I'll share my screen. I got a presentation. I'll go through key highlights of the financial statements. If you have questions at any point, or if you have questions, if you want to wait till the end, feel free to yell them out or hold on to them to the end. I'm anticipating a few questions, but we'll see what happens when I go through this. I'll share my screen. Let's see. Can you see the screen or no?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So we anticipate issuing an unmodified opinion that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with GAAP upon board acceptance. This is the highest level of assurance we can give. Before we go further, I should tell you, these are draft. They're in QC now, so I anticipate issuing them, if not tomorrow, early next week. Nothing should change, except maybe some wording. You know, our QC department sometimes doesn't like the way we word things, but I don't anticipate there being any changes to any numbers or anything with the single audit report. So the drafts that you see will be the final report that you get hopefully early next week. So like I said, the opinion is what everybody's concerned about. It's unmodified. It's the highest level of assurance we can give. That's right at the beginning, the first couple of pages, might be 3 pages now because they changed the format. Right behind that is the management discussion and analysis that's prepared by the college. That provides information that it's an overview of the year and things that will affect the college in the future. And of course, thanks to Jeanette, Julie, and everybody else that got us here. I know it's a big lift. The financial aid, everybody chips in to get us to where we are today. So thanks to them before I go further. So financial highlights. The statement of net position on page 17, due from other governments. We had some big numbers there last year and this year. This year it's $5.1 million. That's down 4.8 compared to last year, which was 9.9. Both years, substantially all of that due from other governments was due from the federal government related to the COVID-19 and HERF funding. This year it's 4.7 of the 5.1. You did get that subsequent to year end in December of 2022 and February of 2023. As you can see, last year, 9.7 of the 9.9 is what made up the receivable. So federal government was a big chunk of that. That's going to start going away now as we move further away from COVID and all the problems that we had with that. Hopefully that's behind us now. The other things on there, net pension asset. This year, ERS flipped from a liability to a pension asset, 3.6 million asset this year. Last year, it was a small liability, 45,700. This, along with the TRS net pension liability, which I'll talk about in the next bullet, they're actuarial determined. KPMG, I think, did it again this year. We take their report, we do some limited testing on it to make sure what they're doing makes sense. And we just use that report to come up with the liability that shows up, or the asset, depending on how it shakes out every year. This year, TRS, you'll see this flipped from an asset last year to a liability this year. Small in the grand scheme of things, $721,000. In the prior year, it was a pension asset of 7.2. It makes no sense to me that ERS and TRS, that they flip. One was an asset, one was liability, and now they flipped opposite of what they were. It just all has to do with the assumptions that are used by the actuary. There's a lot of things that go into their report and coming up with that number. It just fluctuates depending on what they input into their system. This year, net position, $4.3 million, 58.1 is invested in capital assets, leaving an unrestricted net deficit of 53.7. Last year, we restated, which I'll talk about momentarily. We restated at the beginning net assets this year, net position, 1.4 million, 52.1 million of that is invested in capital assets. So last year you had a net deficit of 50.7. Current year revenues in excess of expenditures were 2.9 million. So a positive there, adding to the bottom line. Unrestricted net deficits primarily related to other post-employment benefit liability of 45.1 million. So as you can see, you take that away, pretty much eliminates your deficit. 39.3 million was last year. Again, that OPEB, same thing with the retirement. It's an actuarial determined number. The only difference there, that liability, there are no assets to offset that. So it just grows every year, basically. Again, depending on the assumptions they use, it makes a deferred inflow, deferred outflow, and the liability generally increases from year to year. New York State does not allow governments, which are technically a government, to put away any assets to offset that liability, at least not yet. Hopefully, maybe down the road, they'll allow that, but right now they do not. And again, there's a net deferred inflow and outflow related to that kind of figures into the deficit this year also. Page 18, the statement of activities. As I said, the net position increased 2.9 million compared to 12 million last year. Year over year negative variance of 9.1. Some reasons for that: total operating revenue for 2022 was 16.4 million compared to 18.7 last year. Again, that's enrollment changes affecting all categories of operating revenue. You're not alone. I personally do one other community college, but we as a firm do quite a few, and that's across the board. Enrollment's down, affecting operating revenue for the community colleges, as I'm sure you know. Changes in the OPEB liability and the related deferred outflows resulted in a gain of 1.7 million compared to last year's gain of 2.7. So that's an unfavorable change of $1 million there. 88,900 total pension gain this year. Favorable variance of 345,000 from last year's pension expense. Payroll expense decreased 30.4 million compared to $29.4 million change there. And this year, something new, I'll also touch on this a little bit. Amortization expense on leased assets, $647,000 this year, $647,000 this year, related to the leases that we brought on the books that you've always had. Previously, they were all expensed. but GASB 87 required those leases to be analyzed. We had a whole team that you guys did sign up for and use them to do the calculation. So basically they went through all your leases, and that requires bringing on the asset, bringing on the related liability, and then amortizing those similar to depreciation over the useful life. Other change, not operating revenue decreased 41,700 from 45,700 last year. Again, federal aid related to the COVID-19 HERF funds, 4.7 million, 4.5 of that was lost revenue, has allowed under HERF. Last year you had 9.7 million in total aid. 9.5 of that was for lost revenue in 2021. And then New York State TAP decreased about $162,000 from last year, again, going along with your enrollment changes affecting that revenue. And now if you've gone through the financials, you saw that there's a big $18.5 million prior period adjustment. This relates to the college's culinary and event center on the site of the old Carnegie Library. So this project began in 2012 through Broome County. The project expenditures were recorded consistent with how all previous projects through the county were recorded, based on information provided to the college by the county. As the project progressed, what we did, what you guys did, construction in progress and a capital contribution from the county were recorded. During 2022, while implementing GASB 87, Jeanette brought this to our attention, that there was an issue because you're leasing the building and the related capital asset or the equipment under separate leases, and so I went through all the agreements. They're voluminous. I don't know if any of you have seen them, but there's quite a bit there. So basically the college does not have any ownership interest in the building and equipment, at least at this point. So the project costs actually flow through the Faculty Student Association, which is a component unit. So if you look at the financials and looked at the component unit financial statement that's in there, you'll see an investment in, it's a partnership. That is where the funds should be flowing through. So we basically debited net position to basically eliminate that county capital contribution that was previously reported, and then decreased construction in progress for the 18.5 million. The next thing that's in the report that you'll see is the Yellow Book report. This is nothing new. Format may have changed a little bit. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were reported. No instances of non-compliance material to the financial statements were reported. It's not an opinion, but it goes through. We have to gain an understanding in order to do testing. If we have found something that was material or that was worth mentioning in this report, significant deficiency or material weakness, it would have showed up here. The next section is the Uniform Guidance Report, previously called the Single Audit Report. Total federal expenditures this year, $32 million, 32.8 last year. So you're still getting quite a bit from, as I mentioned, COVID and HERF, 13.3 million this year, 12.6 last year. The major program we tested this year was the HERF, COVID-19 HERF funds. And then in that very similar report to the Yellow Book, but this has an opinion, the report on compliance for each major program and an internal control over compliance, unmodified opinion on compliance. So no findings related to that, the HERF program. And then again, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies related to internal control over the federal awards. The final thing, which you don't have yet, it's a required communication letter. I drafted it. This is, like it says, it's required. We issue it to every client at the conclusion of an audit. Certain things are required to be communicated. Among them, if you've adopted a new accounting pronouncement, this year you adopted GASB 87 for leases. The other thing that goes in there, that report or that letter, no transactions for which there was authoritative guidance. All significant transactions have been recognized in the proper period. We talk about estimates, your major estimates, compensated absences, the allowance, depreciable lives, other post-employment benefits, and then the net pension asset and liability related deferred inflows and outflows. All estimates were evaluated and considered reasonable. No significant difficulties in performing the audit, no disagreements with management, and we are not aware that management consulted with other accountants, and our discussions with management were in the normal course of our professional relationship, and our responses were not a condition of our retention. So those are the highlights. I don't know if anybody has any questions on anything in particular, but fire away.
Questions? Jim, you're on the phone. Any questions? Great. I don't hear any.
No questions.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. We don't give you permission. Yeah, we can. Yeah.
As a draft.
Draft.
No.
Anthony first, second. Yes. Did you get that, Dana? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to section 5, President Trump.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everyone. Nice to see some of the old familiar faces here a little while ago. I appreciate everything everybody here across the campus does for the college every day. I attended the AACC National Conference, likely my last one, unless something comes up in the future that would get me to one. After 21 years, I don't think I ever missed one. And it's just amazing to see what's going on across the country and how we fare amongst the college that present there, and open to the presidents and VPs and provosts. And it's really heartwarming actually to see how well we're keeping up, by and large. And that most of us sort of grumble about the same issues, especially these days, all across the country. But it was a great meeting. Really bittersweet for my final one. The REDC will be cranking up again. For those of you who are thinking about putting in a CFA, as you know, I'm co-chair, at least for a little while longer. And that's been a great experience for me. I really appreciate it. What I've learned about economic development. It's not the sort of thing you study coming up through thinking you might be a community college president someday. And it's so much of what so many of us do across the country, or colleges and of course universities alike. But that's been a great experience, and I've just learned a ton from the professionals in the field. We may be getting either in May or June a recommendation from our shared governance bodies to amend our constitution and our shared governance structure. Jim and Mark and Margaret might remember when I arrived to our 10-year reaccreditation process in February, 13 years and some odd months ago. And shared governance was a standard that we didn't meet at the time. And so we spent the next year putting a whole new shared governance structure in place. Well, with this last visit, which you might recall, it was a couple of years ago now, Penny, that they were here. Again, with COVID, it's hard to keep track as it was a virtual visit. Although we will have a visit here coming up soon, follow up. They recommended, if we met the standard, that wasn't a problem. In today's world, they felt we've kind of gone overboard with our shared governance, which is better than the other way around. And they suggested it was time to update it. And we've been talking about it for a couple of years anyway. And the task force has been looking at an updated constitution and a bit more streamlined shared governance structure. So maybe something at the next at the May board meeting or June for you to consider there, since you're the ultimate governance body with which we all share the responsibility for governance, but you all make the final big decisions. Right now, if it would only hold up, enrollment is way up for fall, but we got a long way to go. So who knows? We've been way up before at this point, and then didn't end up quite there. But again, it's a great trend, especially in that we are up slightly for this semester for the first time in a number of years. And it's looking we're off to a really strong start with fall enrollment, and applications as well are way up. So I'd love to start the year out that way for the next administration. Would be a great way to start. I attended the annual Stir Taste of the Cheer event at the Culinary and Event Center on Sunday afternoon. The place is packed, just how we'd like to see it, with a number of restaurants, providing samples of what they do, and including our own culinary program, and BOCES culinary program is just fantastic. People were smiling and enjoying the food, and Paul Van Savage couldn't have been happier, except we lost the air conditioning on the second floor, and it was one of the warmer days for a fairly new building, but we're working. It wasn't terrible, because thankfully it wasn't one of those 80-degree days, but other than that, people really had a great time. It's nice to see it just jam-packed with everybody who's in the same business that building is in, and just raving about the facility and the opportunity to be in there. We had convocation. This was a Tuesday, I think. We had convocation. We had a neuroscientist talking about the development of the brain, particularly in younger folks, and what various and sundry habits might do to or for your brain. Really fascinating. A nationally renowned neuroscientist from Northeastern University, and always a great event where we shut down regular classes and invite everybody in to hear a major academic speaker, and then break off into smaller sessions to talk about the subtopics that were presented in the talk. Went over really well. Mental health was a huge issue for the nation, and certainly for colleges in the post-COVID era. And tonight, some may be headed there. Well, behind me, there's the Mothers and Babies annual gala, and my wife and son and I will be going down the runway. You can't see my Harley Davidson jeans that I'm wearing right now. The first and only time I've ever worn jeans to work in my entire life. I've got to change my shirt when I get down there. It was Bonnie's idea to do the Harley store this year, because I've always done Saul Stearns or Men's Warehouse or something like that. So looking forward to that. If I run out of here before all the reports are done, that's why, so I can make it as the last group up on the runway for the first round. Looking forward to that. It's a really fun event. One quick story: first time I was ever in it, Rich David was my date, if you will. We were together side by side when he was mayor, and before Bonnie was invited to do it, and the lady in front of us introduced me to her daughter, who was, I think, 4. And then she said, and this is my daughter's 5th Mothers and Babies Gala, because her daughter was in the womb and she was modeling pregnancy clothes, maternity clothes, with the first time the daughter was in the show. I'll never forget that. It's a wonderful event. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, it is a fun event. Thank you. All right, any questions, Dr. Brown?
When you say enrollment's way up, we up a percentage, 2%, 5%?
Well, right now it's like 30%, but it's early.
30%.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a big number. That's
why
why
I say it's a big number. It won't, believe me, it won't be there. But that would be historic.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Miracles can happen.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew Haggerty is not with us tonight for the Council on Academic Issues, but his report is in. We'll go to Dr. Kelly, Academic Affairs.
Thank you. I have a couple minutes, and then Dr. Marty Ochoa is going to cover the STEM area, because the STEM area has really done some pretty significant work in the last 6 to 8 months. So thank you. So first, I just wanted to briefly, I know, Kathy, you get the opportunity to hear about the nursing initiatives every month, but the rest of the board does not. So we'll just give you a few quick things that I think are pretty exciting. Want to thank Michelle McKay and Kim McLean, who have done a super job, really revving up the nursing department, and a lot of really good work is taking place. So thank you for that. Most exciting, our nursing class coming in for the fall is expected to be at 96 students compared to last year, which was 84, and back in 2020 when it was 68. So pretty excited about these. They all look very tired, but they've done a great job. So they're making it happen. So that's really good. And along with that, knowing that we are expanding, also we're working on the Decker expansion right now. Still in the design phase, kind of going back and forth because we want to get it absolutely perfect, but it's looking like it will get there. So they've spent a lot of time back and forth with that, but hopefully we'll have something exciting to show fairly soon as we get it down. And also working on the dental hygiene, updating their equipment as well, and the rad tech, which is obviously very important that we keep the rad tech equipment current so that it's safe. So we'll be doing some of that as well. The other thing that's pretty exciting that I know we talk a lot about, it may not sound that exciting, but the micro credentials is really taking off, and that's really going to help us as well to get enrollment into all of the healthcare programs. The micro credentials are really just a short, sometimes non-credit, sometimes credit, short-term studies, and a couple of them that we just developed, which we're pretty excited about, are healthcare fundamentals and also clinical patient care. And these are only one's 7 credits, one's 9 credits, but they can actually take them and then they can get certification for EKG technician, phlebotomy, and medical assistant. And the nice thing about them is they can all flow directly into our 2-year degree health studies program. So we're really excited about that. And we've also got our health information technology, which is a 2-year program as well, but we've got some short-term credentials in that as well, which we're pretty excited about. Diagnostic coding and EHR basics, CPD coding and documentation, and hospital inpatient coding and quality improvement. Again, which are pretty exciting, and the students who complete that can sit for the certified professional coder exam and also then go into, which we hope, the health studies 2-year degree program as well, and come out and then sit for an additional credential. So lots of good things happening there to increase the enrollment. I'm going to talk about a few of those other initiatives when we talk about the sustainability plan. The other 3 things that I thought were really important that I wanted to point out that some of them did not get in the report because one just recently happened, but Maureen Hankin, professor in the dental hygiene program, and Christina Hansman, who's an adjunct faculty member, took a group of students to Ireland over the spring break for health in Ireland, and actually did a lot of volunteer work working with Ukrainian refugees. So it's really exciting. And I think they got back on a Friday and sent an email out to us to ask us to attend a session on Monday evening. So the students still had a lot of energy and came in and presented. A lot of the foundation board members came and listened to the students present. And it was pretty exciting. There were students who actually had never even been on a plane before, and their first trip was to Ireland. So they were really excited and stayed with families, and it was a great experience. We planned for almost 3 years for our students to go to Mexico, but were delayed by COVID twice. So finally, a group of students got to go to Mexico for an exchange program. They were originally going to go to Celaya, but that became too dangerous. So they were a little bit further away from Celaya, but they had a fantastic experience and sent videos every day. So really, really nice experience for them as well. And then most recently, we had a group of students, which Dr. Marty Ochoa is going to talk a little bit about in a few minutes, but about, I think, 5 students went to the SUNY Undergraduate Research Conference down in Old Westbury, Maritime, not Old Westbury, Maritime. And then also got an opportunity to stay overnight in New York City and attend the botanical gardens and do a little bit of touring. All thank you, Kathy Williams, to the foundation support for the student travel. So it's very nice. It was a really good opportunity. And then this last thing, Hornets for All, is really just talking about a proposal that we're really excited about. And this is really thanks to Danielle Britton, in all honesty, in the workforce development, and doing a really great job. We've talked for a long time about getting down into the schools and really generating the interest. We know it particularly, we're very excited about healthcare and battery, but actually looking at all of our programs as well. So and Danielle's brainstorm is to create a group of Hornet Explorers, which will be grades K through 5. And then the Hornet Academy, which is grades 6 through 8. And then finally the Hornet Institute, which will be grades 9 through 12. Very excited about it. We've run it by a couple of our very supportive superintendents, actually one, to be honest, but the superintendent seemed very interested. So we're pretty excited about that. And the one thing that we're looking at to get started, hopefully next year for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders under the Hornet Academy is really bringing students in a couple of weekends a month to bring them in for each different area from 9 to 12 and look at different areas of the college. Right now we're looking at, but this is not written in stone, environmental science, clinical laboratory, social media. Of course, we get into nursing, healthcare, and so on, battery science, feed production, a lot of our programs, but pretty much 2 a month where we'll have students bust in. And what we're really trying to focus on is the middle of the road students, because we know that lots of students have opportunities for parents who are sending students off to camps and weekend things, but kind of that middle of the road where students are not getting the exposure. So we're really excited about getting that going, and we think we're going to be able to get that going in the fall. So really excited about that, and then more to come. I think it's going to be a little trickier to figure out how to deal with K through 5, but we're going to work on it and figure that out as well.
How about the funding for this?
Well, that's why we started with one superintendent. So we think that we can run maybe some of this through BOCES. We'll be able to fund in terms of the instructors, but some of the transportation, we'd like to provide transportation. It's going to be really hard to get the middle of the road students. So we're hoping we can connect with BOCES and get some funding. So all in proposal stage right now, but really excited about it to make that happen. Yeah.
The funding would be pretty minimal from the district side. So, well, remember BOCES gets all of its money from the districts. So, so it's not really BOCES funding, but
I said buses.
The buses. Yeah. I think this would be very, very feasible and complements work that's being done. So it'll be great.
It's great. Yeah, we're really excited about it. And we appreciate BOCES and the schools for sure. And now Dr. Marty Ochoa, who has been doing a fantastic job with the STEM division, and really we've seen some significant improvement there, which we'll cover also in the sustainability report. But Dr. Marty Ochoa.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Thank you, everyone. And I think I'll just start off with this slide because I think it's a good segue to part of what I'm going to discuss. I hope you're all doing well.
Thank you.
Spring is in the air. I'm excited for that. So as Dr. Kelly said, this particular schematic is particularly exciting for the STEM division because it starts to give us a template that we can use to really develop programs or put programs in, if we can call it buckets, that can allow for a trajectory for students to start to experience not only STEM, but really all of our programs. And so when Danielle shared this with me, I forget, a few weeks ago, I think, and just as a thought, right away started reflecting on what might it mean to have some kind of immersion experience or hands-on experience for elementary school students. And then that gives them that exploration ability. But they start to have touch points with Broome in some shape or form. And then the academy, where we'd have our middle schoolers, we already do programs where we engage middle school students, such as our STEM pathways, such as Spark. But now it becomes a situation where we can have a framework that we can then build on. And Dr. Kelly will talk about sustainability. But as we think about programs and initiatives, it's really helpful to start reflecting on what's that continuum. What can our community, our students, our high schools, elementary, middle schools start to reflect on from year to year, from semester to semester, from quarter to quarter? What are we doing as Broome to engage in a continuous manner with our community? So I think this starts to build a space where even as we're seeking funding, we can start to align that funding with what we're doing. And that takes me to the next one, which is the Hornet Institute, grades 9 through 12. There's a question around funding. So for the battery summer program, this particular summer, we want to run a pilot of the battery summer program, and that will be supported with funding from the New Energy New York initiative. We have funding for 3 years, where part of what Broome is expected to do is to be a part of an initiative where we support workforce development in battery manufacture. So as I reflect on what does that mean for us on the STEM front, it requires us to engage very actively with our coalition. We're part of a large coalition here in the Southern Tier. The New Energy New York grant was one that was awarded in September of last year, about 1.3 million to us on the SUNY Broome side. And these are partners in academia, nonprofit, and within the government. So for us at Broome, our task is to work pretty hard at creating programs that will support the training of battery technicians for companies that are right here, that are local. So IM3NY, Imperium 3 New York, is going to be one of our largest battery manufacturers. We know that they're going to be, well, they're already established in Endicott, but we're already having conversations with other battery manufacturers, such as eZinc, that are now moving into the area because they know that there's a supply chain that is being developed and resources that are being brought into the Southern Tier. So even though we have some partners already listed, we're already thinking about who is that next company that we need to reflect on and what types of needs will they have. So where we are, just to give you an update on where we are with this particular grant, courtesy to Dr. Joel Miller, he started to ask the question, where are we going to train these technicians? BEO has an online program where they're training people. Currently, I believe there are about 50 people going through a pilot training program, which is online. What was determined is that there was a big gap in the hands-on experience. And so the many coalitions started to ask questions, where are we going to train these people? And so Joel Miller indicated that we had labs in the Natural Science Center that were underutilized, and actually reflected on the PhD work that he had done in battery technology, and thought that maybe Broome could bring that to be part of our engagement. And so we hosted a team from New Energy New York a few weeks ago. And once they got on campus, there's nothing like being able to physically see a space that you want to engage in. Many of them had heard of Broome. Some people had never set foot on this side of the community. When they got here and walked into that building, they started to see what this could look like. And we walked away after maybe about an hour and a half meeting, Dr. Kelly, and they said, we want this lab to be at Broome. So we're going to be the provider of hands-on battery training from a lab perspective, courtesy to the work that Joel Miller did, as well as Ken Morrow. We've already hired personnel to support this grant implementation, and this work could not have been done without the tireless work of Danielle Britton. She is a trooper and just continues to build strong partnerships in the community. We have various faculty members that we've already identified to be a part of this grant. Joe Miller, whom I already mentioned, is the department chair in chemistry. Ken Marble, department chair in engineering technologies, and Julie Foley. Between the three of them, they will build out our battery science, our mechanical engineering mechatronics component of this training, as well as virtual reality training, which Julie will do. And so we'll use the virtual reality lab in the AT building, as well as the dry lab in the CAM building, and then a chem lab in NSC. So we see it as a phenomenal opportunity to have collaboration across departments. Like I said earlier, we're already engaging with various community partners. BOCES has been really instrumental in part of the work that we're doing and just designing this. The Southern Door Community Land Trust is a partner that's certainly affiliated with us on the New Energy New York side of the house, but we're also looking to see what other programs we can engage with the Southern Door Community Land Trust to really build on the equity component and bring multiple people to the table rather than just those who know a little bit about what's going on in the battery sector. So we're excited about it. And like I said, we're already reaching out to the battery manufacturers. So this is where we are in Q2. And let me call it 6 months post-grant award. Where we're going next is to run a summer program pilot for 11th and 12th graders. So we're looking at that Hornet Institute. That's going to be part of a pilot of it. And the reason we're doing this summer is that for that battery training lab, we need to turn the lights on September 1st. And we need to be able to figure out whether what we've designed is really going to cut the muster. So we're using the summer as a pilot. Other things that we're doing in relation to this grant is really thinking about ways in which we can incorporate various of our credit programs into this grant initiative. So we have multiple programs that we see as having strong alignment. We're also running boot camps, short-term trainings, working with companies to determine their training needs. And again, this is in partnership with Danielle Britton. This is not just around STEM, but it's really across the institution. Okay. Other things, and this is a segue. Outside of battery, all right, we were also approved to run our food science program, which we're thrilled about. So we can finally turn on the lights in our food science lab. And with doing that, we were able to work in collaboration with Michael Stamets and Danielle Britton to apply for funding from SUNY High Needs to support workforce development in food production. And were awarded just a few days ago, $75,000 to buy packaging equipment, which we intend to utilize for some of those things that you see in the screen there. So we hope to have some tasting opportunities for you here in the near future. Part of what we're also looking to do is to support foodpreneur. All right, so we have a lot of people in the agriculture sector that are looking for different ways to do value addition. You might find that there's a farmer who's been maybe growing tomatoes and selling it straight into the market, but has never really thought about bottling it, right, or pickling and so on. So in partnership with our culinary team, as well as our workforce development, we're looking to have entrepreneurs really build up the leadership and do a boot camp, get some food science courses in, do some food safety training. This would be part of a process of developing a pipeline into the food science program, okay, but also various workforce development opportunities, but definitely supporting our local industries, such as Frito-Lay, that continues to seek employees, Chobani, Beer Tree Brew, and so on, okay? So we'll keep you posted. When the first brew comes out, I'm hoping that we'll be able to figure out an interesting name for our local branded brew. I think there was one that we're toying around with yesterday. What was it? Buzz. What was it? Buzz.
Get Buzz.
Get Buzz. We're thinking about Get Buzz. That was a random joke yesterday. Get Buzz with Broome beer. But we'll keep you posted on how everything's going in this regard. Our goal here is to develop a micro-credentials that we can then use to stack into our food science AS program. Other things that are going on in STEM, we had a very successful robotics competition here recently, and that was on March 28th, I believe, where we had about 11 schools come in and run various robotics competitions. It was just really wonderful to see the AT of us. And I just want to mention that the only reason you can see faces of people here is because of Dave Legaikis and his team. They turned the lights on in the AT atrium in January. And not that the lights weren't on, but they were somewhat dim. And because of the work that he and his team did, we now have such wonderful lighting in that environment. And actually people from outside came in and said, oh, wait, we can see one another, which was great, because that was our intention. But more importantly, we now have programs that we can run there and have people do very intricate work and really experience Broome in ways that they haven't experienced it before. So it was wonderful to have multiple schools here, and they're looking forward to coming back next year, right? And, sometimes when we think about robotics, we have to think about what workforce is looking for, all right? Many of these students, we had faculty members, our students, high school students, various school counselors coming through. And what these students are being given an opportunity to do is to meet with local employers. We have multiple employers there as well, who are already identifying our local talent and letting them know that, if they come to Broome, if they go to BU, there's a job down the road. And so this is part of our initiative to not only engage with our community, but to be responsive to the community. As Dr. Kelly mentioned, we had students who went down to SUNY Maritime to do their presentations. I brought one here with me just to give you a feel for what our students are doing. So this particular project was done by 3 students, Megan Eames, Enoch Stevenson, and Melissa Carden. And what they wanted to do was figure out how to improve the prosthetics that an amputee might use. What is really interesting is that Enoch Stevenson, he works with a graphic design company and is very attuned to measuring the stresses and the electrical currents in different types of equipment. So he works for an engineering company, but on the graphic design side. So his question became, when an amputee is pressing on a prosthetic, is there a way that you can start to monitor what that stress is, and does it have an impact in the way that the neurons work, so that an individual can know how hard they're pressing, how effective their prosthetic is, and can that improve their ability, in this case, to play soccer. And this team went down to CERC, and I was mentioning to Dr. Kelly, this CERC conference is often populated with students who are in 4-year institutions, graduate students, postdocs, and so on. Our students from, our community college, people thought they were graduate students when they saw this type of research, because the types of questions that they're asking and the type of research that they're doing is very robust. And they were supported in this particular instance by Professor Robert Lofthouse, Dr. Kenny Lead, Jason Smith. There are multiple projects that our students are doing that are bringing a lot of value to our community. Okay. Almost at the end, we also had our team go out to the Green Grand Prix. And these are just some of the students who are part of the team that worked on a car that was in competition last Friday. Thanks to Kathy Williams and her team, we actually have a garage that the students worked in to really upgrade their car. And what they found, alongside with Gary DiGiacomo, who's up on the top left, was that they created a car that ended up really winning the efficiency car category at Watkins Glen. That was this past Friday. That is a big deal. Wow, because colleges from all over come in. They have students that are working on cars that are really the cars of the future. So our car had solar panels in it that students worked on and installed there. They got a battery donated to them from Orion. They also built an electrical system on the dashboard that would help the driver determine how much renewable energy they were using, and then based on that, modulate how much is going through the battery. And because of that intricacy, they were actually able to utilize less energy and drive fastest, and which pretty much made them the most sustainable car. So, it's kudos to the team that has worked on this. And we got funding from Lockheed Martin to help support this initiative. So if you remember maybe 2 months ago, I mentioned that we've got some funding from Lockheed Martin for a garage, courtesy to Kathy Williams and her team. This is the outcome from that. And not only was it Lockheed Martin that played a role, but BAE Systems helped with some of the electrical circuits that were built in Orion for the battery. And what that means to us on the STEM side is that our students interact with the high schools, they interact with industry, and they interact with, members of our community which builds a lot of value for them and a desire to want to stay local. So that's just a little bit about what we've been up to, and I want to thank you all for the support that you gave us to the board.
That's exciting. It's really exciting, impressive. Right?
We're very fortunate to have Christine with us. She's done a great job, and faculty and staff also.
When the buzz brew is ready, the health science division will be there to catch you.
That is true.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Any questions? Anyone has? All right. That was awesome. All right, student assembly, Al.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you really quickly to Penny Kelly and her team. They're doing amazing initiatives that faculty and staff definitely see, but also students. And we are very, very thankful for everything that you guys do for us. On the side of student assembly, Convocation Day, as Dr. John mentioned, was on April 18th. There were several student-led workshops this year, which we fought hard for. And they went very well, including mental health, international mental health, led by certain student assembly members. The student engagement ceremony is going to be on April 26th at 6 p.m. and we're just going to be recognizing some leaders on our campus. We are addressing clubs, any new clubs joining, any new constitutions that clubs are presenting, making sure that everything is fair for all of our students. There will be a new BOCES volunteer to make sure the dining hall is being kept clean throughout the day, following some requests from students and faculty and staff. We held Your Voice Matters for students on April 6th to hear any kind of concerns that they had, and we will make sure that they are being addressed. And lastly, Sasha Lofthouse was elected Vice President of the FSA. He is our Vice President of Academics.
Do you get a lot of input when you ask for concerns that they have?
A few. There's definitely needed to be more engagement between students and student assembly. We are setting up suggestion boxes throughout campus to make sure that like every voice is being heard, not only on April 6th or on Your Voice Matters. But aside from that, that concludes my report. Our meetings are open to the general public every week, Friday, 4 p.m. Decker 201, right up down the hall. And everyone is welcome to attend. Are there any questions?
Do you get many people Friday at 4 p.m.?
Actually, thankfully, we have constant fluctuation of different shared governance bodies coming. Like, for example, Erin and Brittany would come from operational issues and academic issues, and we are able to have them to speak on what kind of issues they're dealing with, and they're hear us, sorry. And that started the semester, and we're very thankful for that. There's a lot of communication happening between our shared governances, and I'm very proud of it.
Nice. Nice, thank you. Any questions for Al? All right, 5.5, foundation report, Kathy.
Well, I'll keep it very brief. My report is in the packet. Just to let you know, as of February 2023, the foundation's total investment portfolio, $39.1 million, of which $37.8 million is endowed. The foundation's total assets were $44.1 million, including the beneficial interest in perpetual trusts, compared to the fiscal year end June 30, 2022, when we had total assets of $43.4 million. So we're going in the correct direction. The foundation did have a net surplus year to date through February of $1.66 million. Contributing to this was a $750,000 estate gift and realized and unrealized gains of over $1 million. Other activities are going on. We're very busy. Our continuing scholarship application is closed, and our incoming scholarship application will be closing next Monday evening, and that's for students coming into Broome. And we're really looking forward to our event on May 9th, and we hope many of you will be able to join us. You know, the magazine is out, and next weekend is our alumni reunion, and that consists of a Friday night mixer where we have our faculty and staff, and also some of our retirees, some of whom are sitting in the front row this morning or this evening. And we're just really excited. We do have a lot of first timers attending reunion this year and younger people. So we're quite excited about that. Our newer graduates really are starting to feel a little bit more connection, I think, than graduates of the past. So thank you very much for approving the naming of the Ed Dog Field. I want to thank our friends just thank Dave and his entire team. They've done a beautiful job with the brand new scoreboard. I think we're going to be covering it up before the family gets here. They are traveling from New Mexico and Maine next Saturday to be there when we do the ribbon cutting and kind of dedication. We do have a number of his former players coming back to see the family and to take part in the event, and you're all invited too. That'll be on Saturday the 29th at 2:30. We're slated to do that in between the double headers. We are having a 75th anniversary time capsule ceremony on May 3rd. We won't actually be burying the capsule then, but we will have the rock or the plaque that's going to be out front. We'll have a display of a lot of the contents. We would like to invite you. We're going to invite the media, and so we'd be happy to have you join us for that. And we're expecting a $250,000 estate gift from an alumna who left us the remainder of her entire estate after assets were liquidated. And that is going to support need-based transfer need and scholarships for women coming back to college. So, any questions? No?
Great report. Yeah. May's a busy month. A lot of good things. All right, moving on to facilities update. Dave?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Christine, I don't drink a lot of beer. I drink a lot of wine. So if they could redirect their efforts to wines, that would be very
We'll work on that. There is a still. There's a whole distillation. Yes.
All right, I'll hit
invite you to join.
Okay. I'll hit the highlights. If you haven't noticed, on the backside of the ice center, we are constructing an outdoor fitness court. That work will be completed tomorrow. But if you get a chance, take a ride by. The graphics are really pretty cool. It's black and gold, and some other colors are being used. But the court itself is I think, going to be a real asset from the standpoint of our physical education department and the community in general. So it's a good thing. We're also finishing up the construction of our third pavilion. And if you come into the Wales parking lot area, you'll see it. It's located between actually the Student Village and Titchener. I think all that's left is to put the metal roof on, so that will be completed within the next couple of days as well. And one thing point I want to make about that is I'm as you all know, I'm very proud of our staff, our construction staff, and they constructed these three pavilions in addition to doing a lot of other work on campus. But Michael and I talked about finding out what it would cost to have a private contractor build these pavilions, and roughly it was in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. So over the course of these three, we're saving around $75,000 to have our guys do it, and they do really a great job. If you remember when we bid the restroom project for Old Science Student Services, we only received one bid on the plumbing side, so we decided to rebid that, just the plumbing. The bid a month ago was $538,000 for the plumbing work. We rebid it. We got 4 bids this time, and the low bid was $405,000. So we saved about $135,000 on that rebid, which is a substantial amount of money, obviously. The RFP for architectural services to convert the old science building to a student union is being finalized and will be advertised very shortly. Christine mentioned the electric vehicle garage, and we are actually going to, as I think I've indicated to you before, we're going to create an electric vehicle garage in the old science building that they will have a permanent home for that vehicle. A couple of other things. The photo lab finally is going to be advertised this Sunday for bid, with bids being opened the 3rd week in May. So hopefully we get that contract finalized fairly quickly and can begin that work. And maybe if we push it, have that ready for opening in the fall, for the fall semester. And lastly, Dr. Kelly has referenced it, and Kim, the design for the nursing renovation work in Decker is moving ahead very well. We had another meeting today to really hone in on what we absolutely positively need and trying to refine it so we get a better handle on costs. But that was a very productive meeting. As Kim knows today, she did a lot of work prior to that meeting in getting information to the architect to allow them to do some rework, previous work that they've done. We meet again next week, and hopefully the construction manager will have some firmer costs that we can react to and see if we need to further refine the design or not. So that pretty much summarizes my report, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dave? Thank you very much. All right, Michael Sullivan, Budget and Finance.
Last but not least. So as Madam Chair has requested us to give you an update every month on both sustainability of the college as well as progress with the Binghamton University initiative. Dr. Kelly and I are going to try to team this together. And before I do that, I just would like to recognize Jeanette Tillotson. So it's a monster job getting the college's audit done every year, especially with all of the PERF funding that's gone through it for the last 2 or 3 years. And probably didn't quite understand what the auditors were saying about a major change, because we really are leasing culinary during a compliance period. So it was being booked in 2 different financial statements, and it only can be booked in one. And this new rule around lease goods had a significant impact to pass those on. So Jeanette, thank you. You keep me out of jail most of the time. And so what we'd like to do is you have hard copy of both the PowerPoint and kind of the detailed documents. And I'm just really going to highlight, because as complicated as this looks, it really isn't super complicated. And so we want to start with enrollment, because at the end of the day, any business really got to take a look at the revenue side of the business. And as you know, we've been talking about enrollment, post-COVID for the last several years. So in your long sheets, the very last page, we give you some data that SUNY provides around high school graduation rates and their predictions around full-time enrollment. So just look at that at your leisure. But that's just one data element that we use, because at the end of the day, a sustainability plan that we're just going to briefly talk about tonight is really driven on the revenue side. And so all of this is really based on, so as you look at that first row, what's driving that, so all we've done here is in the long sheet, we show you last year's actual, the current year's forecast, next year's budget, which you just approved, and then 4 years out. What we try to show you here is just those end years, last year's actual, and then 26, 27, and just really show you what's the 5-year difference, okay? Those last 2 columns. So as you can see, high school graduation rates, for all practical purposes, is flat. Then the next row is really on-campus enrollment, okay? When you hear about concurrent enrollment, fast forward under Jason's group, we're basically saying, because high school graduation rates are pretty flat, we're basically saying likewise, we might do better in optimizing high schools and expanding other schools. But for now, conservatively, we're saying the last couple of years have been fairly flat. The big number is really the second row. That's on-campus enrollment. And as you can see in the second to the last column, the average for the 5 years is a little under 60. Okay, so 5 years times 60, we're predicting about 300 net FTEs. I know Dr. Stenger has talked about possibly with BAP 102030, maybe being 600 net FTEs, $5,000 annual tuition, about $3 million. So we're kind of cutting that in half, just trying to be pretty conservative. They're doing some pilots that Dr. Kelly will talk about with the B2B program. So we're just being more conservative, maybe setting the bar a little lower for Dr. Stenger to have to achieve over the next 4 to 5 years. So we're basically saying about half. And this isn't all just Binghamton University. You know, we're taking a look at a number of things, including what, you know, the conversation about STEM, and Dr. Kelly will talk about a number of other initiatives. So total enrollment, fourth row there, we're saying about 2% growth on average a year, okay? But that's a pretty big step for us over the last 5 years, where COVID took out about 30%, and prior to COVID, for the 2 or 3 years before then, we saw a little bit of fast forward growth, but the net FTEs lower. And what we really want to show you too on the bottom is fast forward, all we get is state aid for fast forward. We don't charge students tuition. So, so the value is less. That's all I'm saying. Even though it's 12% of the portfolio up top, we show you fast forward's about 12% versus on campus is about 88%. So, but the money is different. It's about a third versus on campus enrollment. So that we're just giving you the value. So those 50 FTEs average, we're saying it's about 60. That's probably worth about 600 grand per year, because we're saying we're going to increase FTEs by 60 per year over 5 years. So, so you take that 600,000 times 5, and there's kind of that 3 million that we're using federal stimulus if we can keep everything else kind of balanced. So that's the enrollment forecast. Now, Dr. Kelly and I spend a tremendous amount of time, because this is the most important number in the whole sustainability plan. So we talk a lot about how are we going to get 2% growth a year, when for the last 6 or 7 years, the average has been below flat and substantially eroded during COVID. So Dr. Kelly's just going to speak on both give you an update on the BU discussions, and also several other key initiatives that, at least representing the finance side of the equation, why at least the college feels fairly comfortable that this is a reasonable conservative estimate for the next 5 years.
So on the left-hand side are a lot of our Binghamton University, obviously, collaborations. And first off, the BAP expansion. This is the BAP that we've been operating under for years. But this year, the goal is to take it from, I think it was about 120, 190, around 200, and get it up to 240 this year. So they've sent out, BU has sent out what they think will yield 240 as they'll monitor that. So we're hoping to get 240 students, which will be an addition. And we've already got the schedule set up in order to make sure that we can accommodate those. So that's one piece of it. And then the next piece, which we're really excited about, I think I might have mentioned a little bit in the last meeting, but that is the B2B guarantee. And I wish you could see the graphics to this. As they produce the graphics, they're really good. It's really, BU is really helping us in this situation. So the B2B guarantee are students that applied to Binghamton University, but did not get accepted. So they have been sent letters from Binghamton University that their preferred transfer school is SUNY Broome. And that will be within like a 60-mile radius. So it's really focusing on that local population. And then the guarantees are pretty significant. So if the student takes them up on this, one, they don't have to apply. They're automatically brought into SUNY Broome. And then if within the first year, they get their 18 general education credits, 30 total credits and get a 2.8, they automatically move over to Harper College, which is pretty significant. So really excited about that. And then there actually is the other level. If they don't make the 2.8 or they choose to stay for the full 2 years, then they need to complete the 60 credits, full 30 required general education credits, and again, get the 2.8, and they will be moved automatically over there. So this one's very experimental at this point. So they're sending out those letters and we're kind of waiting to see what's happening, but they are starting to funnel in, and that only went out, I think, 2 weeks ago, Jesse. So some of them are already funneling in. So we think that's pretty good, because if you're applying to Binghamton University, you're probably applying to a lot of large colleges, competitive colleges. So we're already getting some of those that are opting to come into this program. So we think that's going to help that local market quite a bit. And even if they're not necessarily students that had applied to Binghamton University, I think that word getting out is going to be really significant. In fact, BU is going to attend our counselor breakfast with us May 9th in May. And they're going to come to the counselor breakfast and actually talk about this. And they've also sent letters out to the local counselors letting them know that this is happening. So I think just that word of mouth and awareness also is pretty significant. And again, we've got such good agreements with them right now that I think we'll really be able to spread the word and hit those local markets. The future BAP is still in discussion, but what we're hoping to do is have a next version of BAP where students may live on our campus. We're still talking about what that might look like and how to make that happen. That won't be in the plans for next year, but that's something that we want to continue talking about as well. In addition, we now do have the fully signed pharmacy articulation with BU, guaranteed seats again for students who go through our our liberal arts and sciences program, specifically planned so that they can transfer into the pharmacy school. And we're going to still be developing some activities where our students can go over to BU and kind of get a sense what the pharmacy school really is about, to make sure that they can go and they can they don't have to take the test to get into the pharmacy school if they're in this program as well. So another really good opportunity for our students that we think will really help as we move forward. We've talked several times about the School of Management program, but I just think it's so important. The School of Management, BU's School of Management, is in the top 25 public schools of management in the country. And for our students to be able to go in there, right, they have to have a 3.75, but we're talking about students who may have never taken an SAT, had no intention necessarily of going to BU, and they're coming here in this business administration program and proving themselves and really getting a fantastic opportunity. In fact, the other day, my department chair from business sent me a letter that a student had sent him saying just that she was a non-traditional student and she just got accepted in the School of Management program. So very, very excited about that and a great opportunity. We're also in the process of developing a new program, revising our accounting program so that instead our accounting program traditionally is a terminal AAS degree program and has just been declining in enrollment. And we have a similar program where students can go out in that terminal degree program. So we're changing this to a transfer degree program. And then we're looking at transfer opportunities again with BU. We're already in discussions with that, which looks that it's going to be pretty hopeful as well. Health sciences, we've talked a lot about, but one of the things that we're looking at again, Dr. McLean has had conversations, as has Michelle McKay, working with Dean Ortiz over in the School of Nursing to look at potentially also a transfer automatic agreement for our students who graduate with a 2-year degree. They can get their RN license and start working and go into BU's school online, finishing up the RN to BSN. So very excited about that. We're still working on some details, but we think we're going to be able to offer some opportunities to students to guarantee them admission as well into that program.
They'll be online from BU?
Yeah, the second 2 years is online. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity. They can start working and continue that online. And then Dr. Marty Ochoa, I think already filled you in on the Battery Academy, but we're really excited about that. It really provides us with some equipment, a lot of people on campus, understanding what we have here. So while they may go directly into work, I think we have the potential also for a lot of students to actually end up coming into our programs. And then on the other side, a couple of things. I didn't pick all of them because I know that in the essence of time, but we picked some of the key initiatives on the financial sustainability plan. Dr. Marty Ochoa gave you a really good idea of the activities that are happening in STEM. And maybe not all of this, but I think as a result, this spring, our new student enrollment just in STEM, new student enrollments was up by 35% from last year going into the spring semester. So we're pretty excited about that. Our Fast Forward program was up 3.76%. And as Michael Sullivan said, it may not yield as much money, but what we're really trying to do strategically is create that pipeline. So really looking at courses that will go into our courses, marketing that a little bit better. And we have an additional work group this year that's really trying to build those relationships between our faculty and the high school faculty to get a better understanding and really to continue to promote and build that Fast Forward program. And I think that group has been really beneficial, and they'll continue working throughout this year and next year. Our REACH program, this was a SUNY grant, I think I've mentioned before. The REACH grant is Racial Equity for Adult Credentials in Higher Education. We've been awarded funding to create short-term credentials, and we were expected to provide a plan of how we would reach into the community to bring up underrepresented students into the workforce and into these programs. So we've been working with the Attain Lab and again, the Southern Door Land Trust to try to start looking at ways for us to get into those markets. And that is also the reason why you see the mobile enrollment ban, because that's really one of our approaches is to go into the communities, show the students what we have, work with them, help them with the financial aid and all of the services available to get a sense of what we can do for them to bring them in. And then I think we also talked about this RN to BSN is actually a Delhi initiative. SUNY Delhi also has an RN to BSN program. This program they're offering at the CEC this summer. It's free for students to take, and what it's doing is for students who have completed their 2 years, take this program. They will get some credits, but they'll also learn how to actually do the online program so that they can get started in there, and they will earn some credits toward that. And we will be promoting that also within the hospitals because that's really open to anyone. And then the summer programming. Oh, sorry, I missed the reference. Our retention, again, I'm focusing on STEM in this. Our STEM retention, also pretty significant, and that's why I wanted to highlight STEM tonight because we've seen such improvement in STEM. Our STEM retention from 4 years ago, in the spring to fall 4 years ago was 73.2%. This spring it was actually 80.1%. So I think that really getting those activities and getting students involved is really starting to pay off, and we're pretty excited about that. And last, but I think that's already been discussed, is our summer programming. We have 2 critical summer programming things that I think are really important. One, we're developing the healthcare summer programming and we're working with BOCES to do that. And we also have the Battery Academy that will be offered this summer, as well as then some for some very young people, but again, starting that pipeline and getting those students interested as well. So before I turn it back over to Michael Sullivan, are there any questions on any of those initiatives? I know I didn't cover them all, but we can always do that in another meeting.
Dr. Kelly, you said, I'm going to make sure I was writing notes, but on the STEM, the new student enrollment is up 35%.
From last spring to this spring, right. It was a 35% change in new enrollment. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's pretty exciting. Amazing. We're not talking about massive numbers, but again,
I know
35%. We're pretty excited about it.
Do you know what that's attributed to?
I really think there was a lot more outreach. There's been outreach in the high schools. That these short-term things in the battery, I think has really done a lot. People have really been out there in the community. And I can't thank Christine enough. I really think that while it hasn't been a long time, I think there's a lot more visibility and the faculty really are on board. I can't give them enough credit. They have really been participating. They're reaching out within the community and seem to be really moving forward nicely. It's great. It's impressive.
Maybe your 30% is real.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. We'll certainly be back.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives you at least the devil in the details around the enrollment assumptions. I think they're reasonably conservative. And you know, the enrollments. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. I've said this in the past. You know, when we've kind of grouped these. Take a look at the first row: state and county support. You know, state has frozen us at that what we call the ceiling at 100% of the prior year, which is just about 13 million. You know, and the county has perhaps given us best case a 2% increase, sometimes a 1%, sometimes a 0, probably on average a 1%. So for all practical purposes, almost 40% of our revenues are basically flat. So that's a big problem. And it's not going to be solved anytime soon, I don't think. So there then becomes a lot of pressure on the second row, which is tuition and fees. So as you look out over the 5 years, on average, maybe about a 5% growth in tuition and fees over the 5-year period. We have to take care of this stimulus money that we've been very dependent on, understanding that our costs would potentially go up even at half the current rate of inflation at 2 or 2.5%. If it was at half, with 40% of our revenues flat, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure either on the rest of the revenues, or we'll get to briefly the expense side of the equation. Charges, the third row is really out of county students that come to SUNY Broome. We charge them just like the sponsor gives us money for Broome County residents. So that revenue will go up because the out of county residents get a break when we're using stimulus money to subsidize part of the budget. As the stimulus money evaporates, then we'll have the opportunity to charge a higher rate for an out-of-county resident. So that's part of, likewise, student fees are going up, but there's a big chunk of probably 6 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, for charges to out-of-county. So that even this Binghamton University concept of a 60-mile radius, that'll attract out-of-county residents that we can charge, and then maybe potentially also fill some of the housing units. So federal stimulus, this is the 600-pound gorilla. You see, you know, in the forecast for the current year, about 3.7, 3.8 million. We anticipate over the next 2 years of the balance, which is about 3 million. You just passed a budget that has about 2.5 in it. We have about 500K left for the following year if we need it. So, and meanwhile, we also have more than 5 million outside of stimulus money and unrestricted, which is about 11%. So worst comes to worst, this doesn't transition perfectly. We probably have $1 million to $1.5 million out of that unrestricted fund balance if we need it. But at this point, our forecast is suggesting that we won't. So just again, on the bottom of the screen, just to give you an idea, every 1% in tuition and fees gives us a little over $200,000. So we're talking about enrollment going up 2%, which is worth about $600,000. If we're driving tuition and fees up 3 or 4%, it gives us almost $800,000. That's really the two revenue sources that we have to try to accommodate some of the costs on driven by inflation. So the next page is expense. Really the critical aspect here, and you've heard me say this a lot over a long time. So we have instructional costs and non-instructional. Instructional, you've heard us talk a lot about class sizes. This past 4-year labor agreement, driven by Dr. Kelly's negotiating skills, got us to a point where we think that we'll continue to reduce our instructional costs based on larger class sizes that we think are well within the benchmarks around New York State, much less in the country. Non-instructional, the assumptions in the budget. Last month, I mentioned we have a kind of a fairly strong hiring freeze on, primarily because for the rest of this year and over the next 4 or 5 years, the assumptions are that 5 to 6 positions out of the 216 that are in the non-instructional side will need to stay vacant. So as we kind of restructure things, do some things, again, on the bottom, if you take a look at non-instructional FTE vacancy savings, it's almost 400 to 450,000. So on the instructional side, we're saying we could save about 140,000 by continuing to modestly every year increase the maximum class size dynamics. So the key thing is when you take a look at payroll, that third row, which is full-time and part-time, and take a look at the percent, which is 55%. Then you go to the next row that shows fringe benefits at 30. You got 85% of your expense base with payroll and benefits. So the rest of the discussion is worth having because everything else, non-personnel, is the next row, which is a little less than 15%. Utilities is in there. Every other expense other than payroll and benefits is there, with the exception of capital repairs and equipment, which is a very, very modest. It has been about $500,000. I think we have about 350 in there over the remaining 4 or 5 years. So take a quick look at the last 2 columns in order to create a sustainable budget over the next 4 or 5 years. Take a look at those average percent increases. We can only have about a 1% increase on the instructional side. Non-instructional, same thing at 1%. How are we going to do that with a 2.5% salary and wage adjustment? That's the 5 to 6 FTEs that we're not going to refill every year, not 5 to 6 over 5 years, but that would be about 30 over a 5-year horizon. So payroll then obviously is a 1% growth. Contractual, just utilities, as you saw in the monthly forecast, up 50% this year for us. So, that's $1 million utilities for the whole campus, plus culinary is about 1.5 million. So 50% is a significant number even for me. So we're really trending the expenses down to about 1.5% a year. And then the last page is just in the essence of time is really just a summarization of over the 5 years, what are the key assumptions. You also have this on the long sheet. The first page are all the enrollment and retention initiatives, some of which Dr. Kelly spoke to. Over on the right side of that narrative are the cost containment initiatives. So you take a look, those are exactly what we're doing. And then the next page of the long sheet, the second page, is really all the numbers for each of the years. So the critical thing is we took last year's actual, which is the audited financials you just heard about, our forecast for this year that you get every month, and then you've approved a budget for next year. And then the 4 years outside of the proposed budget. So the proposed budget for next year is pretty comparable to what we're suggesting the following 4 years are going to look like. Fairly conservative. And I think the college senior team feels pretty comfortable that this is doable, which at the end of the day means we're going to take $3.7 million of stimulus money this year get to 2.5 next year, get to 500,000 the following year, and then it goes away. All right. And still maintain a healthy unrestricted fund balance at a little over 11%, with about, I think, about 5.5 million of unrestricted. We really moved that over the last 6 years. We had barely 5%, 2.5 million, and basically have doubled that before we got into the COVID space. So as the chief finance guy, I just takes all of us, especially on the enrollment side, Dr. Kelly's team, and the whole college has really got to manage the expense side. I think we have a lot of policies and procedures in place to manage 85% of the cost side. So I think we feel pretty confident that we can, and we'll provide this to you every 6 months, generally after each of the main semesters, take a look at the enrollment assumptions. If the enrollment assumptions are not as conservative as 2%, then we'll have to adjust the expense side. So I'd be happy to answer any questions today, or in deference to time, you know where to find me. And we could talk a little bit more next month if there's more time.
We don't need to address it tonight. I'm curious, the ratio of instructional salaries to non-instructional salaries, if that's normal for a community college. I would expect the flip. The instructional salaries would outweigh the non-instructional, but it's about $5 million more in non-instructional.
Yeah. So a quick answer. So about 5 or 6 years ago, it was close to 50-50. So it was at about 58%. But here's really the dynamic that's happening. On the non-instructional side, one would make the argument that most of that is fixed cost. Yeah, we've lost some enrollment, but most of that is fixed. So to the extent that that's fixed and enrollment's gone down 35%, you'd expect the strong variable part of this to go down. So that's really what's happened here in a nutshell. When we compare ourselves, so the annual report that you see at the end of October is a standard report for all 30 community colleges. So pre-COVID, the community, SUNY Broome was the 4th lowest cost for admin and general. We were the 4th highest in instructional, and we were the 4th highest for academic support services. So, and we're very low in facilities maintenance. So we were really not in alignment. And
so academic support,
library, advising, counseling, Jeanette, what are the other 9 or 10? But and anything that's non-instructional and probably not in the admin finance area.
Yes, things are categorized in different ways at different
they are
levels, right?
Yes.
So trying to wrap your head around what's instructional and not.
Dr. Kelly, just one question. The one program would be with the 60-mile radius.
Yeah.
But is there a magic to that 60-mile radius?
Just because they were trying to keep it within the region right now, which kind of probably makes some sense that, well, I don't know if it makes sense, but in their minds, it makes sense that they would be more likely to come here because they really want to go to BU because it's within that region.
Yeah, just be interesting to see what you find it. I would think it would be a little bit broader.
No, we certainly hope maybe they'll expand one day.
Yeah. All right.
I think there's also a little bit of sensitivity because the community colleges are supposed to stay in their region. So to the extent that we're piggybacking on BU, who has the broader reach, I think there is some sensitivity that we're kind of pushing the limits. But it's something the chancellor likes, and might be a good pilot for others as we go forward.
Any other questions for Sullivan?
A lot to take in, you know?
Yeah. Well, take a look at it, and if you do have questions, you need to bring them back. All right.
Could I add one thing about the new school amendment? The scholarship that you all started in one of George Hill actually funds one of those outstanding students every year. And I just thought you should know that it's part of the process that we have.
Yeah. Is it still capped at 25? Is it 25 seats?
25 guarantees. Pretty good.
Yeah. All right, 5.8 is the faculty eligible for professional development recognition increment. It's in your packet. If we have anything. Right, and 5.9, Jesse.
Standard report.
Thank you very much. All right, I would like to propose a brief executive session. Thank you, Margaret. Second, Mark, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, thank you to everyone. Great night of reports. Thank you very much.
No.
Thank you.